Hey everyone, well we're back into the boot lid on the XK again tonight. Like I said yesterday, what I'm going to do is run through what we did with the fiberglass resin to thin out the bog a little bit to make it spread easier, because we're not really trying to put product on there to fill as such. We're just trying to take out the little imperfections in, like looks like it's been maybe put in storage at one point in its life and had stuff laid all over the boot lid. Possibly even a small bit of hail damage there, but it's all little shallow pock marks everywhere. And where someone's been a bit aggressive with a stripping disc or a sander or something like that at one point in its life too, it's got a few nicks and cuts there. So we're going to go in and show you what we got done last night and how it finished off, and then run through what we did with the the fiberglass resin and the filler, and then we'll get into putting some more on. All right, let's get in and have a look. Okay, so where we left off last night is the boot lid's all nice and straight, pretty much for that back half and down over the roll. And we managed to get rid of pretty much all of the little pinholes and air pockets that I could see from the first attempt. So as that sits, that's good enough to go into primer. So we can then give it a guide coat and actually get a really good idea of how messed up it is and how many low spots I've missed. So what we're going to do tonight is, oops, sorry, wrong way, go that way. So what we're going to do tonight is, from about here back, we're going to put a light skim coat on, and hopefully that low there and this low here are the two that you can physically feel by hand. Now this one over here is pretty much how this one started out. So theoretically, by the time we rub it all back, it should look pretty much the same as that. And when you look at that, there isn't really that much product in there. It's fairly translucent and you can see through it. So yes, we're putting a lot on as in coverage wise, but it really isn't that thick. So we're not total hacks, I suppose. So if we get over here now, so nothing special. That's a product from Evercoat, Metro Gold. I think we got it through Eagers Refinishing Supplies over at Newstead. And just a can of any old fiberglass resin. So we're going to get in, mix that up, and show you what we do to put it on. Now I really should have like a larger spline or something like that, but all I'm working with is a few metal applicators, and that's, I think, the largest one I've got here at the moment. I don't think, there might have been one laying around a bit bigger, but yeah, it'll do for now. All right, I'll switch us up over here so you can see, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's get some of this out. Now the reason I didn't show you this last night is I really wasn't sure if it was going to work. So Murphy's Law now that I think I know what I'm doing, I'll try and show you, and it's going to bite me on the butt. Okay. What I'm aiming for is too much product, so I can try and do it in one hit without having to go back and mix more and more, which is what I was doing last night, making a mess. And like I mentioned, the resin actually does give it a much longer work time. So normally if I was to do this, I'd be throwing half of it away because it was rock hard. So all going to plan, I should be able to mix this and get it on and have no issues with it actually going off on me before I use it all. So, well, that's the plan anyway. Now we can see there the product is quite thick, quite solid. It actually doesn't apply too bad straight out of the can if you're trying to fill or get a fair bit on for a low spot. But for what I'm trying to do, I just want it to do a nice light skim over the whole boot lid. So now what we're going to do is take some of this, and this is the bit I'm not sure about. How much is too much? Okay, that'll do us for now. And before we put any hardener in that, we're going to work the resin through and in, and hopefully you see it change consistency as we go. Mozzies are back. Alright, try and get this done before we get bitten alive. So it's lost that chalky texture, and it's got a bit of a, instead of a dry look, it's actually got quite a shiny skin texture to it, I suppose. So now if we get that, like that, get some hardener. And whether this is right or wrong, I don't know, but yes, I'm trying to fold it, knead it, I suppose, but I don't want to introduce too much air into the filler, which I've probably done really badly at. So when you then mix it, we're trying to squeeze that air out of it. Not that one, the one I'm going to use. And then finally, see how that's, it's not watery, but it is a lot thinner. So that's going to be way better for what we're trying to do. So yeah, from now we're just going to take it over, drop that on the panel, and spread it and go from there. So get yous over here. Sorry. There we go. Watch me make a meal of this. All right. So basically, I go, you know what I did last night, it worked. Okay, so get some of it out there. And we're going to really want to push that on. Oh, you messy bugger. There we go, made a mess of it already. Now remember, we do have quite a bit of product here to spread, but if we've done it right, I also have quite a lot of work time to go through. And like I mentioned, I suck at doing this, and apparently I suck at getting the hard bits out of the filler too. So that can of filler is, how would you say, it's old. We've had it for a while from when we first started the project. So some of the bits and pieces in there, it's not as smooth as you would like. So then every now and then you'll get a hard bit and you think you're getting the filler on nice and even. And then you'll get a dry piece in there that makes an absolute mess of it and puts a gouge through it. So I come back and try and fix it. Now there's no way I would normally have had this kind of work time with the kind of humidity and heat that we've got here. And there's no way I ever would have attempted to try and put this much on and spread it out in one hit and not have massive trenches and furrows everywhere. So I'm not saying what I'm doing is right, but it works for me. If it works for you, awesome. You might say, you're an idiot, it's not going to work, it'll affect the finish, I don't know. I've never tried it before. I just saw someone mention it, thought, let's give it a shot. So far, I'm happy with what it's doing. So, now we try not to finish off and leave any jagged bits anywhere before the next lot goes on, because that's going to be an absolute bugger to sand. All right, there we go. Wipe that on there. Pop this stuff over here quickly, and then we'll get you in and have a look. Okay, so like I said, I really do a poor job of putting this stuff in, but that resin has given us quite a decent work time to get the product on and to try and float it out and level it out. And it really isn't putting a lot of product on as in thickness wise, but it's getting it across the whole surface so we can then go through and longboard it. Now, I've just got to mix a little bit more up and do in there, and then we'll get you in and show you what's going on with the dry time. So all up, we've been into this for just under 15 minutes, and that's way easier than spot filling all over the place. Worst thing you can do is go and like spot fill all the small dents. You're better off spreading it over a wider area, put more on than you need, and that way it'll actually blend itself into the whole panel. And when you block it all back and sand it off, you end up floating the whole panel and it actually comes up nice and true, rather than having piece here, piece there. And then when you go to sand it with the primer on and the guide coat, you end up with a whole lot of waves everywhere. So I'll get another small batch mixed up, get this done, and then we'll see how long it takes to dry. Okay, so we've got that second part in, and then I've cleaned up the bits and pieces and went up to the house and got some Aerogard because the Mozzies have decided to start again this year early. So we've got that in across the back, and it's transitioned not too bad. So the good thing is it's got a long dry time. Bad thing is it's got a long dry time after you put the resin in it. So now we're just going to have to sit here and, I don't know what the word for it is, baby it, I suppose, till it just takes away that tackiness. This first batch is actually pretty close. So what you want to do is not leave that until tomorrow and come back and sand it, because then it doesn't matter how good the bog is you use, you come back tomorrow, that stuff's going to be like concrete and a pain in the backside to sand. So if you baby it and go to the point where you can touch it and it's not tacky to your fingers, which that one nearly is, over here, not so much yet, then you start sanding into it with the, now we're not going to go coarse on this because it is a final skim coat before we go to paint. So we're going to start with, say, an 80 grit dry paper on the board and work down to a 120. And that should be a good enough finish that we can put the high fill on top of that and go from there. So, but if you cut into it with the 80 initially as a quick cut to get that, what do you call it, the glossy shine coat off the outside, the skin, as soon as that's gotten to the point where it's not tacky and it's not going to clog your paper, rip in, cut that off. Once that's cut off, you get the majority of it off, come back tomorrow and keep going, and it's going to be pretty good. If you let that skin go and it stays on there, come back tomorrow or the next day, that's going to be a pain to break into and sand. It's going to be hard as hell. So even that one's not bad. It's not tacky, it's only just there. So we'll leave that a little bit longer and then we'll come in and rip into it with some 80 grit paper. Now while we're waiting for that, like I was saying, nothing special at all. Chopping boards from the house that the wifey doesn't use anymore to mix the filler on. It's not porous. It's got a nice handle that I can hold with my arthritis and control it. And they're a decent size and they're lightweight. And yeah, and that's about it. So I'm not real good at trying to explain what I'm trying to get through to you, but the idea of spot filling. So if you were to go through and chase a little spot, a little spot, a little spot, and just fill those little areas and then block them back and then try and prime it, you would end up with a shadow around there and a shadow around there and a shadow around here. Whereas if they were the initial ones and they were lows, when you've done your initial guide coat and your block, if you did a skim coat like we've done there, bonnet's already had it. That's already had another coat of paint over the top. But if you do like that, and then you sand with a longboard, nice and flat the whole way across it, what am I saying? You're blending the whole panel, I suppose, and you're finding all the highs, all the lows, and you got to know when to stop, because if you stop when you find the first high, then the rest of the low has to come up to match it, or you've got to knock the high down. Either, what's going on? So yeah, so we'll leave that go a little bit longer and then we'll come back and rip into that. And if anyone's noticed the brown XA bonnet sitting in the corner, it's not as good as the one on the car, but in saying that, the one on the car is the one I want to leave standard. It will get painted body colour when the car gets painted and then hung on the wall in the shed if I ever want to go back to stock. This one is going to have the GT flutes cut into it and possibly bonnet pins, and whether it comes off or not, I'm thinking about building a tunnel rammed 351 to go in it, so that'll be the one there that we cut up for the tunnel ram to come through. So, and with Queensland laws being what they are, if I do get defected and have to put it back to stock, it's a case of intake off, standard 4-barrel and carby on, and standard bonnet on, and it's all ready to go. All right, I'm going to have a drink. We'll wait for this, and we'll get back into it the minute we can start sanding. Okay, so it was fairly smooth and dry to the touch, so we just gave it a hit with some old 80 grit from last night to see what would happen. It is sanding really easy, but as you can see, it did not clog the paper, but it did leave pieces on the paper that it shouldn't. So it was a little bit premature to start sanding. So now that's sat for a little bit longer. We'll get in and rip into it and see how easy it is to take it off. That's going okay. So I'll get a mask on and we'll hook in and go for it. Okay, so that is blocking back pretty nice. So it's knocked all the highs off. And now it's just a case of going further and further until we get to the point where we're happy with it. And then we'll wipe it down and get it ready to paint. So I'm going to put some fresh paper on that's not half worn out, and we'll put it on time lapse and go from there. Okay, so we're going to leave it here for tonight, guys. So that's been hit with the 80 and the 120. And like we can see, like I was saying, it is fairly transparent, it is fairly thin. So most of them have come out, the low spots. So that's as good as it's going to get until we get primer on there and then guide coat it and block it back with 120 and 240 in the guide coat, so we can see where it all is. But for now, that's good enough, and we're going to get in and clean up. And the next one should be, once I've got the workshop clean and this mess off the floor, I'll get in and we'll get the pair of these into primer so that we can then bolt them onto the car, so they'll be a lot easier to longboard once they're bolted on a car and not swinging around on a stand. And we'll repair the 2 front fenders and all 4 doors, get them to the same stage, bolt them on the car, and then what we'll do is go and longboard the entire car all in one hit, fix any little blemishes we have from there, and give it a coat of sealer and ready and colour and clear. All right, again, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.